because I searched high and low yesterday to find something of James Earl Jones talking about his faith, his Catholic faith, any faith really, and I found almost nothing. But it got me thinking about the greatest James Earl Jones film ever made. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking Field of Dreams. You're thinking Darth Vader, the Star Wars series. No, Hunt for Red October? I agree. Fantastic. I loved him in Hunt for Red October. There's no question. But nope, that's not the one either. No, instead, no, it is not coming to America. Stop it. Stop. It's not that one either. Instead, we're going to be talking about the day and the time when James Earl Jones played the devil.
By the way, my name is Joe McLean. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below.
James Earl Jones died at 93. What a life. What a filmography. I mean, have you seen the guy's list of films he's done? Going back to 1952, I think it was. The man's done so very much. Did you know, though, that he was a Catholic? He converted when he was in the Army, in fact. And he said that when he was in the Army, what he had most was his Catholic faith and his Shakespeare to distract his mind from the art of killing, is what he said. Something along those lines. We're going to link to the article in the Catholic News Agency that recounts that story for you, because I searched high and low yesterday to find something of James Earl Jones talking about his faith, his Catholic faith, any faith really, and I found almost nothing. You know, fascinating story. Born in Mississippi, raised by his grandparents, actually. His dad was an actor, but he was not allowed to see his dad or talk to his dad, I guess because of the wayward life his dad was living, until he was an adult, basically. And they would move. During the Great Depression, Grandma wanted to get out of Mississippi, so Grandpa packed the family up and they moved to Michigan. It's a very fascinating story because along the way he developed some emotional trauma, I would say, and he had a stutter, and he really was mute for a number of years. And it's amazing to think, considering we remember his voice, the voice of Darth Vader, and the voice that boomed and read the Gospels and read the whole Bible at one point, that narrative voice that was used so often and so many times over the many decades that he served in Hollywood, that we remember him most for it. So to come from such humble beginnings is fascinating. In fact, to listen to James Earl Jones talk about how racist his own grandmother was and how he had to learn to judge people on an individual basis rather than on broad strokes is fascinating. You should go, I'm sure by now you have seen a lot of recapping of James Earl Jones's life already since the news broke just yesterday afternoon. And many will be talking today about Darth Vader. Many will be talking today about The Field of Dreams and a bunch of other films. One of my personal favorites is, of course, The Hunt for Red October. But that is not the film that I want to share with you today. No. There was a film, in fact, that I thought most of yesterday afternoon as I was thinking back on the life of James Earl Jones, having played such a critical part of my own childhood and upbringing, being a star that he was. Of course, who can forget Darth Vader? But nonetheless, it was his role in the 1987 film, I think it was 1982, in fact, is when it came out, of Conan the Barbarian. He plays a necromancer. He plays a necromancer, a man who can turn himself into a snake. I want you to think about that for a second. There's a scene from the film that I want to play a few seconds for you called The Riddle of Steel. Listen to this.
Steel isn't strong, boy. Flesh is stronger. Look around you. There, on the rocks, a beautiful girl. Come to me, my child.
The girl jumped from a height to her death simply because he beckoned her.
That is strength, boy. That is power.
It's fascinating, this one section. If you watch the whole film, I want to point a few things out to you that I think are that are worth pointing out. One, the whole film starts out with a Friedrich Nietzsche quote, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger." This quote I know like the back of my hand because my drill instructors back in boot camp blazed this into me. I mean, literally, like, as a cow was being branded, so were Marines branded with this phrase. That which does not kill us makes us stronger. Boy, oh boy, that Nietzschean phrase really does encapsulate so much of the film. This film, again, of a central character who demands to be worshipped. A character who becomes an actual snake and has a snake cult worship going on. But this is a worship of death. It's a worship of self-indulgence. It's a worship that destroys. It maims. But there's also some other elements in the film that are very fascinating. One, this character, this Mr. Doom, necromancer, snake god character, chops the head off of the mother of Conan, the young Conan the Barbarian. And then, of course, has Conan crucified on a tree. How do you miss these things? How do you, as a boy, I didn't think much about these scenes, but now as an adult, especially as a Catholic, I cannot help but see the influence of Genesis chapter 1, 2, and 3. The tree of the life, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the tree on which the fruit that we could not partake. And now the tree of Calvary in a garden, set in a garden according to John's gospel, upon which is the fruit of life itself. So we see these elements, and at the end, it is, in fact, the head of the necromancer, of this Mr. Doom, this snake god that gets crushed, so to speak. It's almost as if the film has a bit of an inversion going on from the actual Gospels themselves. You know, we see, did you remember the Passion of the Christ? There was the scene of the scourging. And there's this moment when our Lord is depicted there, lying on the ground, bloodied from his back being torn, the skin on his back being torn. And this is before they flip him over and start beating the front of him. And he's looking up, and the devil is there holding this demonic-looking child in its arms, and it's mocking the Lord. What is going on in this scene? You know, the devil does not want Jesus to actually die on the cross. The devil wants to tempt Jesus' humanity into denying the will of God to die on the cross for your soul. It is the opposite that the devil wants. Mocking the mother of him affects his human heart, just like it would you. If I mocked your mother, you would not stand for it. You would punch me out. Same thing. You go for the man's fallen human nature. But the devil did not know that Jesus is perfect, sinless, without concupiscence. So the devil must prod and tempt and try to see, to discover where the weaknesses are. And he went after the mother. It was a mistake, because Jesus would not even spare the grief of his own mother at the foot of the cross, let alone that of his disciples. Jesus will not create one single miracle to save a disciple from the will of the Father. Not even one. He wouldn't save himself, and he won't even save his mother from the grief of it. But his mother, being a saint and completely immaculate, born and conceived immaculately, lived her whole life without the single stain of a single venial sin in her entire life. Unlike you and unlike me, she would sit there at the foot of the cross and she would take it like a saint. Unlike you and unlike me, we would be begging to bring him off that cross, not the Virgin Mary. And we know this because when we read sacred scripture, especially Revelation chapter 12, we are told that a great sign appeared in heaven. The Ark of Covenant can be seen in the heavenly temple. And no, it is not a box laden with gold. It is purity itself. It is the finest creation ever in the history of creation by God. And that is the woman, clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. And she was with child, and she cried out in her pangs of birth in anguish to deliver, to bring about salvation itself, I would add. And another portent appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems upon its heads. His tail swept down 1/3 of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, and who was about to bear a child, that he might devour her child when she brought it forth. She brought forth a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was caught up to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, in which to be nourished for 1,260 days. Go back and read Daniel's prophecies. There is a link. Now war arose in heaven. Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought, but they were defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who was called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before God. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. For they loved not their lives even unto death. Rejoice then, O heaven, and you that dwell therein. But woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. And just like James Earl Jones' character back in 1982 in Conan the Barbarian, playing this necromancer, this serpent that would lure, entice, even by a single look, and convince these people to follow him, to abandon God, really. This was almost an inverse of the Gospels that we're seeing in this movie, the Conan the Barbarian. But it would not be the woman having her head crushed, as the movie depicted, as he chops off the head of this woman who plays almost this quasi-Virgin Mary role. No. Instead, in the end, the real head that gets crushed is not the woman. It is not her child that loses, but it is the serpent itself, the ancient Nahash, the dragon. In the end, Our Lady, Queen of Heaven and Earth, there is nothing the serpent can do to attack her, to manipulate her, to get her to sin, to turn her back upon God. She, no matter the visual, emotional elements laid before her, no matter the dragon itself, the threat, the fear, she is never given over to it, because her emotions are guarded by reason. Yes, she experienced fear. Yes, she understood loss. She gets the emotional reaction to seeing her son crucified there. But her reason, her intellect, is governing those emotions and putting them in check. That is the difference between someone who is not driven by a concupiscent nature and someone who is. That is how she can stand at the foot of the cross, look up and see her son gasping for breath, to pull himself up on the nails and the wounds and to say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. She can stand there and take it so that you might be saved, because she is not given over to concupiscent nature. And the dragon has zero power and nothing in common, no enmity between her seed and the serpent. Genesis 3:15. Let's reflect on the life of James Earl Jones today and pray for his repose, to be sure. But a man who spoke too little about his Catholic faith, in my humble opinion, gave us something more important to reflect on today, and that the devil will lose, and there is nothing he can do about that. If you live in a state of grace and pursue virtue, he will lose, and he will lose big.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.